Hi, my name is Habeeb Akande, and I'll be talking about womanizing or the art of womanizing. Where I'll be reading a passage, some passages from my book, Illuminating the Performance, African and Arab Erotology, which is a book about womanizing and erotology from a African and Arab perspective. This was a book that I wrote about 10 years ago in 2015, and I want to talk about the art of womanizing, first explaining what it is to womanize and what is a womanizer, why men womanize, so you can understand the psychology behind womanizing. And then I'll talk about the different types of womanizers. And then after speaking about the different types of womanizers, I'll talk about the different stages of womanizing. And then I'll talk about some of the dangers of womanizing, and hopefully to help men who may be struggling with this and how they can overcome it. And also for, if any, it's mainly directed at men, but obviously women are more than welcome to listen to help understand the psychology of why men womanize. Now, again, I'm not saying that womanizing is something which is good. It's something that from obviously a religious perspective, it's wrong. But it's a reality that many men have and do indulge in womanizing at some stage in their life. I myself did indulge in womanizing for a number of years. Fortunately, I'm not that same person in many respects, but again, I wanted to kind of talk about it because I know this is something that a lot of men struggle with. So, by definition, what is a womanizer? What does it mean to womanize? So, according to the Oxford Dictionary, to womanize is generally used of a man who engages in numerous casual sexual affairs with women, and is often used in a derogatory sense to, um, not necessarily to maybe a sign of disapproval, to call someone a womanizer. And womanizing is basically the fact of having a number of sexual relationships with women. Now, a womanizer is also known as a player, a playboy, a lady killer, a ladies' man, Don Juan, a Casanova, Lothario, Romeo, Mandingo, amongst many things. Now, among some men, womanizing does have a positive connotation because a number of men do respect womanizers as in the ability to seduce and sleep with multiple women. Now, again, like I said, from a religious standpoint, it's something which is deplorable. Um, and obviously, womanizing is can be considered a type of promiscuous behavior. So, a number of womanizers are promiscuous. A number of womanizers are also sex addicts, but not all sex addicts are womanizers. There's a difference between the two. Because a sex addict is someone who does not have the ability to control their desires, or they struggle to control their desires, or they feel that their desires are out of control. Whereas a womanizer is someone who who maybe can control his desires, but he chooses to engage in numerous sexual relationships with women, or he's someone who is struggling to control his desires. So a womanizer may be a and maybe a sex addict. He may not be a sex addict, whereas all sex addicts, you could say that they are can be considered to be a womanizer. Now, there are some people who consider sex addiction to be a mental illness. I don't necessarily prescribe to that. I think in some cases it can be, but generally in most cases, I just think it's just bad behavior by men. But I think oftentimes when people are caught of having extramarital affairs, um, then they may say that I'm a sex addict and then go into rehab. So you have many high profile celebrities who have been caught, like cheating and having numerous relationships, from Harvey Weinstein, Tiger Woods, um, there's some Ryan Giggs, a footballer. Um, there are so many, and again, it's very easy to say that I'm a sex addict, and they might be have some actual issues, and some people link it to childhood trauma or what have you. But again, everyone has their own reasons and excuses for why they indulge in numerous sexual encounters. Now, some people they womanize by way of casual hookups. Some people they womanize by way of having short-term monogamous relationships. So, like a serial monogamist could also be considered to be a womanizer, or also someone who is polygamous, who has multiple wives, um, where he can have two or three, even short-term marriages. Now, again, that is unethical and clearly it's immoral, but unfortunately, that is something which a number of people do engage in clandestine secret relationships. These also include some religious leaders and preachers who will make use of, you could say, legal loopholes to take advantage of vulnerable women to sleep with them. And then they marry another woman, then they marry another woman. It's basically a form of womanizing, but it's done under the garb of religion. Now, again, from a religious perspective, I mean, I would argue those practices are clearly unethical and immoral and not religious, not Islamic. But unfortunately, again, like I said, this is something that is quite widespread amongst a number of Muslim communities. So, a question that people often ask me is, why do men womanize? Now, again, it varies from person to person. Some men, they like the pleasure of the hunt. They like the thrill of sleeping with multiple women. Um, and again, the womanizing, as in actively sleeping, having consensual relationships with multiple women, is usually different to someone who is soliciting an escort or a prostitute or sex worker, because in the case of soliciting a sex worker, you're actually paying for woman's services, whereas generally with a womanizer, you're enjoying the pursuit of the woman and then also enjoying the pleasure of having relations with her. So again, the reason why men do womanize is some of it is also validation, seeking validation from our peers, because a number of men will secretly respect you, or praise you if you have the ability to sleep with multiple women. Um, and also some men it's just like an ego boost. And some men use it as a form of validation because maybe they wasn't successful from at a younger age of, or they were heartbroken. So now they use this as a way to feel good about themselves. So again, there's different reasons why men womanize. Some it might be because they feel they're not being fulfilled with their current partner or partners, so then they go out to sleep with and continue to chase another woman who might be able to give them that satisfaction that they crave. And in many cases, it's nothing to do with the woman herself. The reason why men womanize, because ultimately it's really a case of um the man lacking sexual discipline and sexual control. So a number of men we take pride in having the ability to seduce a number of women, when in reality it does indicate a lack of self-control and sexual discipline. Now, in terms of the different types of womanizers, so I mentioned in my book, Illuminating the Performance, that there are, generally speaking, two types of womanizers. There is what I use the lion versus hyena metaphor to indicate this, where I describe that the characteristic, a lion womanizer is a sexually disciplined man who adheres to an ethical code of conduct. He is a strong leader and he is also a hunter of high value women. Whereas a hyena womanizer is a man who is sexually undisciplined and he tries to have sexual relations with practically any woman who arouses his desire. He has very low standards and he's mainly led by his desires. So these are two different types of men. There's one who is, like I said, sexually disciplined. And again, this might be a man who is a womanizer. Again, obviously by choice, but he has an ethical code of conduct. He's not going to lie to the woman that he's having sexual encounters with, or he's dating or courting. He makes his intentions very clear. He has high standards. He has a quality over quantity mindset. He's able to control his desires. He's someone who's generally speaking quite honorable, although he may be doing something which is somewhat immoral. He's very clear with his intentions. So every woman that he's with, he's very upfront in terms of what he's looking for from that relationship or that encounter. He does value himself as a man. He has somewhat of a strategic approach when dealing with women, and he's someone who's very confident in himself, sexually confident. And he generally doesn't talk too much about his sexual relationships. He doesn't, boast and expose the woman or the women that he's sleeping with. And he generally speaks or tries to approach women by himself. He doesn't rely on, you know, speaking to women when he's amongst his friends. He's quite calculated. He does possess some strong masculine traits. He's considered to be a leader of men as well as being respected and a leader of women. And he's someone of principles, integrity, and morals. Although, one may say that how can a womanizer be someone of principles, integrity, and morals is because he's very clear with his intentions, he's very upfront. And again, the woman or any women that he's having relations with, they're well aware of what his intentions are, whether he's going to be a womanizer in the form of polygamous relationships, because there's some womanizers who you could say, who have polygamous relationships who are married, but then they have another woman and then a third. Now, not every polygamous man is a womanizer. I just want to make that clear. Because, like I mentioned, generally womanizers have short sexual relationships with women. Sometimes it can be long term. And in contrast to the lion womanizer, it's the hyena womanizer, and he is a man, like I said, who's sexually undisciplined. He has very low standards, and then he has a quantity of a quality mindset. So he just wants to sleep with as many women as possible. Sometimes he has relations with escorts, sex workers, and prostitutes. He is known to be someone who begs for sexual activity. He someone who's probably watches a lot of pornography, masturbates a lot. He lacks self-control, and he frequently indulges in unprotected sex, even with women he's not committed to, or women that he wants to be in a long-term relationship with. And he's someone who's very boastful about his sexual relationship. So he would you could say kiss and tell. And the reason why he does this is because he seeks validation from other men. So he wants to boast to his male friends and other people about the women that he slept with because he's got, you could say, low self-esteem. So he seeks validation from others. So this is someone who not only sleeps with women because he enjoys women's company, he sleeps with women to kind of seek the validation and approval of other people, particularly other men. So he's someone who's got, you could say, low morals, or he lacks morals, and he has very weak masculine traits. And he's someone of popularity, trend, and immorality. So he would do what is the status quo, what everyone is doing. So these are again, like I said, to sum it up, as a lion womanizer is one who takes pride in attaining a woman through hard work and effort, and he has some integrity and principles. He's very clear with his intentions. Whereas a hyena womanizer is a man he just wants the easy option. He just wants to, what you could say, hit and run, smash and grab, just to have relations. He's got no ethics, no code of conduct. He will lie, cheat, do anything to sleep with women. And his mindset is someone that, again, he's like a hyena or a scavenger who just hunts women. He's quite a deplorable character. A lot of women they don't respect him, even women who've had relations with him because of his character. So the lion is essentially someone who has got principles and morals, whereas, like I said, a hyena is more like a scavenger. So they're the two types of womanizers. Now, the stages of womanizing. So, in terms of the stages of womanizing, and this is what I highlighted in my book again, Illuminating the Performance, African and Arab Erotology. I've outlined four stages of womanizing. These are: stage one is that of the potential womanizer. Stage two is that of the experienced womanizer. Stage three, that is of the competent womanizer. And stage four, that is of the lion womanizer. So I'm just going to explain what these four stages entail. So the first stage is that of the potential womanizer. And this describes a man who's usually in his teens or early 20s, who's become sexually active for the first time with a woman that he's attained through his own efforts. But he's someone who kind of wants multiple women or another woman. So, and again, this is like a lustful stage that a lot of men go through, where we have a lot of testosterone, and once we maybe slept with one or two women, then we want to seek more, and it's purely out of greed. It's generally nothing to do with the woman herself. So after feeling a sense of pride and satisfaction by his first sexual conquest, some men he then desires more sexual experiences. And this also could be a man that's married, that a man that may have been not engaged in premarital sex and he got married as a virgin, but then after a period of time, maybe after a couple of months, he or even a couple of years, he now feels that he wants to experience another woman. So what a number of these men do, and some of them they do it in the form of taking advantage, like I said, of religious loopholes, is they would then, or maybe they would then just seek if they can marry another woman by way of a polygamous relationship. Sometimes it's done secretly. So like I said, the stage one is a stage of a potential womanizer, and this is where the man has the desire, like I said, to sleep with multiple women. But not every potential womanizer will actually become a womanizer or player. So just because someone has the intention or the desire to sleep with another woman, it doesn't mean he will act on that desire, because he may refrain himself due to his religious, cultural, or moral beliefs, or even due to being incapable of of having another woman. So the stage two womanizer is someone who is a man who's more experienced in womanizing. So this is a man who has now had multiple relations with women. So he's had a number of physical relationships with women and has reached a level where he has effectively figured out some useful seduction and lovemaking techniques that work well for him and his female partners. Now, the mindset generally of a womanizer at this stage is that it's all about sex. So he's somewhat like a scavenger or hyena womanizer. His mindset is very just about quantity over quality. He doesn't really think about the methods of attaining women. He's quite unscrupulous, and then he lacks self-restraint, and he's just concerned about his own sexual gratification. He's not really thinking about the woman or her family or the repercussions that his irresponsible acts can cause. And this is someone again, like I said, who's generally a scavenger womanizer, and who's had maybe a number of a few sexual encounters, and this usually applies to men who are under the age of 30. Then stage three is the womanizer who has evolved his game to the level where he's fairly competent in satisfying a woman's sexual desires, but struggles to satisfy her emotional needs. So this is someone who's more than a scavenger. So he's able to satisfy a woman in the bedroom physically, but emotionally he lacks those skills, generally speaking. So his lovemaking skills are intact, but he has yet to master the art of mental penetration, the art of emotional connection and emotional intimacy. And also there's another type of womanizer who's the opposite, where he has the ability to satisfy a woman's emotional desires, but he lacks the ability to satisfy her physical needs. So this is a man who's fairly competent in seducing a woman mentally, but his physical lovemaking skills are not up to par. And oftentimes he leaves his sexual partners, romantic partners, frustrated by his poor sexual performance. So again, so this is where a man is competent in one level, so he's either competent in fulfilling a woman's physical needs, but then emotional side he's inadequate, or he's confident in fulfilling a woman's emotional needs, but the physical game is not up to par. And so these again, so that's like the third stage of womanizers. And a number of womanizers are at this stage. They were like you could say the nomadic lion. They're very relatively good at one part of the relationship in terms of fulfilling her physical needs, but they're lacking in terms of the emotional compartment, or they're very good at fulfilling the woman's emotional needs, her romantic needs, but in terms of the bedroom and helping her experience orgasm and climax, squirting and what have you, they're not that good in that regard. So the fourth stage is this is the last stage of the womanizer. He is like the alpha male lion. He is the leader of the pack. He is a man who's excelled in the art of physical and mental penetration. So this is a man who is mastered the art of satisfying a woman physically as well as mentally. So this is quite you could say a dangerous man, because he's well versed in both in meeting a woman's physical needs as well as satisfying her emotional desire for connection and intimacy. And he's capable, and one of the challenges of a womanizer at this stage is that because again of his ability, he can cause a lot of heartache, especially if he acts recklessly and irresponsibly. So this is a man who, again, has got great power, but with that great power, as the saying goes, comes with great responsibility. So they're the four stages of womanizers. The first stage, like I said, is the potential womanizer. The second stage is the experienced womanizer, who's like a scavenger, hyena womanizer. The third stage of the is the womanizer who is fairly confident in satisfying a woman's physical needs, but he's not good at satisfying a woman's emotional needs, or he's good at satisfying a woman's emotional needs, but physical needs he's not up to par. And then the fourth stage of womanizing is like the alpha male lion womanizer, which is someone who is well equipped in satisfying a woman both physically as well as emotionally. So they're the four stages of womanizers. Um, Now, I also wanted to talk about the importance of and this is something to help men, especially if those who are struggling with womanizing or thinking about doing it, is to think about the dangers and the repercussions of some of your behavior. So the dangers of womanizing, or some of the consequences of womanizing, is it can result in physical, psychological, or spiritual harm, not only for you but also to others. So the fear of harmful consequences, which may occur as a result of womanizing is the main reason which deters many men from doing something that they desire with multiple women. So although you may have the desire to to sleep around, to engage in promiscuous behavior, to commit zina with multiple women, although there are also again some consequences that one needs to be aware of. So fear is the greatest and oldest emotion known to man. It serves as a powerful motivator to prevent men from danger and resist the temptations of women. So although again, and I want to make it clear that someone womanizes because of out of his own volition, his own choice, we shouldn't blame women. So I don't subscribe to the idea that it's the woman's fault and men are just weak and they have no choice in this matter. As as adults, we don't. It's not. I wouldn't even consider it to be a mistake. It's something that someone's actively doing, but one obviously needs to be aware of the dangers and warnings about womanizing to kind of prevent them, because not everyone will. Of course, again, not everyone's religious, so religion itself is not a deterrent to prevent all men from to stop men all men from womanizing. And some men, the fear of God or the fear of Allah is not sufficient enough to stop all men, all Muslim men as included from womanizing, because there are a number of men who are Muslim who are religious, but still that in and of itself is not enough. There's other things that may help them or prevent them from womanizing or curb their womanizing ways. And some of these dangers or warnings about womanizing are number one, sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections. Now, of course, if you're engaging in multiple sexual encounters, especially if it's unprotected, you may contract an STI or STD. Number two, honey trap and unwanted pregnancy. So a and actually I'll list these and I'll discuss them in more detail. So some of the dangers and warnings about womanizing are sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections, i.e. STIs, STDs, a honey trap and unwanted pregnancy, marital and family breakups, financial cost of child support and divorce, being falsely accused of rape, breaking a woman's heart, attacked by the woman's family members, especially her male members. You may find it difficult to be faithful in the future, or you may find it difficult to pair bond. You can lead people astray, as well as leading yourself astray. The loss of the woman or women that you love. So if you're engaging in womanizing, you might lose your wife or your long-term partner, or if you have multiple wives, they also may leave you because of this irresponsible and reckless behavior. Reputational damage to yourself and to your family. The shame of sleeping with an unattractive woman. Um, the fact that it's illegal in some countries and this can result in going to jail or being prosecuted. Your desires becomes your lord. So you can be someone who your sexual desires becomes effectively your lord. And there's also the threat of divine punishment. And again, that's especially for those who believe in who are religious, that obviously engaging in womanizing, engaging in extramarital or premarital relationships is something that is prohibited in most not all religions, including obviously Islam as well. So these are some of the dangers or warnings about womanizing. Now, some of them I'll expand upon, like the honey trap. So a honey trap is basically where it's a scheme which a woman lures a man into a compromising situation to provide an opportunity for blackmail or harm. So some women, there's also a pregnancy honey trap, and this is where a woman tricks a man into fathering her child. So a woman may, engage in a sexual encounter. It might be a hookup, it might be a long-term relationship, it might even be marriage. But her intention, she has a deceitful intention. She really wants maybe your child. So that's an example of a pregnancy hookup. So again, if one is reckless in their sexual behavior, you can also obviously be caught by way of of a honey trap. And this is also can take place within a marriage that a woman might not actually want to be with you. She just wants your seed. She wants your child. So she might trap you into fathering a child. So deceptive honey trap usually come and can come some cases even by a woman stealing your sperm and impregnating herself, which is rare, or can also come by way of her misleading you into thinking that she is using contraception. So she might say she's on the pill, and then you have unprotected sex with her, and then not realizing that you're going to become a father. So this is, and I know of this as I've been in some honey traps myself, and again, like I said, this is something that one needs to kind of be aware of because you need to protect your seed. Because unfortunately, there are some women who do honey trap men, especially if you're a man who is doing relatively well for themselves and you can financially look after a woman. Some women look at see honey trapping a man as a way also to keep a man from being committed and faithful to her. So she might know that you are a playboy, a womanizer, what have you. But she might honey trap you because by getting pregnant, she might believe that now you're going to be loyal to her because of the child. So just be aware of this. Um, because again, this is something that does happen, but it's not really spoken about quite widely. But again, if you wasn't engaging in womanizing or you was quite more strategic in terms of the woman you chose to sleep with, then it's unlikely that you will fall for the honey trap. But again, just something you need to kind of be aware of. Another danger of womanizing is being falsely accused of rape. Now, a number of high-profile men have been accused of rape, even some religious leaders who, like there was a recent case of the Islamic scholar and Muslim thinker and author Tariq Ramadan, who was accused of rape by multiple women. Now he was a former professor of Islam, teacher at Oxford University. It was prominent worldwide. He was a great orator, great speaker, a very charismatic man, speak multiple languages. Now, it recently came out, I think a few years ago, that he was accused of rape by multiple women, I think over five women in Sweden, in France, and Switzerland. Now, he then later came out and said that he was married at the time and later came out and said that he did admit to having consensual relations with some of those women, I think at least five, but he denied he denied raping or sexually forced himself on any of those women. Now, again, this is also one of the dangers of womanizing because obviously because he was indulging in multiple sexual relationships, that also there's obviously a risk that one of those women or multiple of those women can accuse you of, sexual harassment, rape, and what have you. Now, I'm not going to talk about um, whether, I mean, obviously we know that in this, from Islamic perspective, it's prohibited to engage in adultery and things like that. But the reality is that if you're engaging in multiple relationships, womanized, and then obviously there's a risk that you may be accused of like sexual assault, rape, and what have you. Now, I don't know whether he's innocent or not. He was found innocent I think, in France, but there's still some cases ongoing in Switzerland. But the fact that again you're engaging in multiple relationships with women, also open yourself up to potentially a woman lying on you. So that's something, and also it may be a case of he might have, forced himself on those women. I don't know. So that's between him, the women, and Allah, and hopefully justice will prevail. But again, this is one of the things that men need to be aware of is that if you are engaging in promiscuity, if you're sleeping around, especially if you're intoxicated, um, this is also one of the challenges or one of the issues or the dangers of womanizing. And an African American scholar, Dr. Boyce Watkins, he also spoke about this in an article where he said that how sleeping with the wrong woman might turn you into a rapist. And he spoke about the perils of womanizing. And he gave a strong warning to young men in particular, telling them to be careful because he said he's seen a number of situations where a number of men who have engaged in relationships with maybe like strippers, casual hookups, random women, in terms of one night stands, and a number of those women have accused the men of sexual assault or rape and what have you, and some of those men have been high profile celebrities, athletes, and he was targeting the men, and his article saying that the men need to practice sexual discipline, to have self-restraint. And this is one of the dangers, and like I said, the perils of engaging in womanizing. So, and then I'll just close this off by saying that again, for a man who's struggling with his desires, and again, it's very common. We are human beings, but not. It's important that we shouldn't justify our our immoral thoughts. Again, if you're going to act on it, then you have to be aware of the consequences, which I've mentioned previously. And obviously, it's better to not engage in such reckless and immoral behavior because you then will obviously avoid a number of those dangers. Not only is physical harm and psychological potential harm, but also spiritual harm. So again, it's just something that one needs to kind of be aware of. It is possible to stop womanizing. So you could be someone who is a womanizer or a player, or some people, or you could be considered to be a sex addict. Some people might call you a narcissist. And I do believe that everyone can change, but you just need to be aware of your own weaknesses and limitations. If you know that some women are like your kryptonite or certain situations you find it very difficult to refrain from, then obviously avoid those situations. Take accountability. I think it's extremely important to take accountability and not to blame the woman because you may be feeling weak or vulnerable. As men, we're supposed to be leaders and we're supposed to be able to control our desires. And again, many high-profile men have had challenges with womanizing, whether it's Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, um, like I said, Tiger Woods, great athletes, and these are also Mike Tyson, and these are also a number of people that I did respect or do respect at one time and another. Some of them were able to overcome it, others struggled with it. But again, it's just something that it's very widespread, but I'm not going to. We shouldn't make excuses for our reckless and immoral behavior, but just try and know where your weak points are and see how you can curb it. And that's again a very high level overview of the art of womanizing and talking about some of the types of womanizers, why men womanize, and ultimately how you can overcome this reckless, irresponsible behavior. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. And if you want to know more, check out my website, my institute. I have more courses on erotology from both an African, Arab cultural perspective, as well also and some courses from a religious Islamic perspective. So that's the Erotology Institute, erotologyinstitute.com.